This is Journey to Chinese Fluency Podcast, episode number 16.
Embarrassing moment, culture insights, proven methods to achieve Chinese fluency. Skip that learning curve with the Journey to Chinese Fluency Podcast. Now, your host, Victor Yang.
Hello everyone, Victor Yang here and welcome to Journey to Chinese Fluency. Today I am joined by David Kral. His Chinese name is Wang Dawei. David is from Melbourne, Australia. Apart from English and Chinese, David also speaks a little bit of Italian and French. David started learning Chinese 10 years ago, since year 7 in high school. He is now an English and Chinese teacher, completing a Master of Secondary Teaching at the University of Melbourne. David also performs bilingual musical shows at primary and secondary schools to encourage students to learn languages. And here's one interesting fact about David. He has won awards in 2 shows on China Central Television. 你好, David. Welcome to the show.
你好, great to be here. Hello.
Are you ready to share with us your journey to Chinese fluency?
准备好了? Absolutely, already.
Awesome. So first of all, please feel free to fill in the blank a bit for the introduction.
Yeah, well, that's right. As you said, I started learning Chinese when I was in year 7 at school, and I was studying French at the same time, and we did the language for 6 months, and then we had to choose one of them. But I just thought the Chinese character system was so fascinating. It was so different from anything I'd experienced before, and I decided to keep going with it. I went all the way up through to year 12, even though lots of people were saying, doing Chinese in year 12, particularly in Australia, the competition is really hard. But no, I pushed forward and I actually got full marks for my final oral examination and then got a scholarship to go to Monash University. And while I was studying Chinese there, that's where I got involved in the first of those competitions, which was the Chinese Bridge competition. So I won the first place in the Melbourne competition and then went over to compete in China, where I won the award for Most Outstanding Performance, which was really exciting for my performance of 小苹果, the Little Apple song and dance. Yep, and because of that competition, I then got a 1-year scholarship to go and study at Nanjing University. And in my time there, that's where I was in the second TV show, which was the 江苏外国人才艺大赛, the Jiangsu Foreigner Talent Competition, where I got the award for Most Outstanding Original Performance. And now I'm back in Melbourne and I'm studying Masters of Secondary Teaching, and I've just been doing my placements out at a school where I've been teaching Chinese from year 7 to year 12. And I'm very excited and very happy to be here today.
Awesome. Sounds like you were having lots of fun learning Chinese. So first of all, you started learning Chinese since year 7, and your school had this Chinese as a second language program, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. So there were 4 languages on offer, and I got to choose. I got to pick 2 of them. I chose French because my mum has some background in French, but I chose Chinese because I really didn't know. It's amazing to think that this one little decision back in year 7, where I was going to do Japanese, I remember, and then I thought at the last minute, no, I think I'll do Chinese. There's a lot of people speaking Chinese, and it has changed the last 10 years of my life and totally transformed my future.
Right. So once you got into university, did you continue to learn Chinese as a degree?
Yes, well, after finishing high school, obviously it's very stressful towards the end, and I worked so hard learning all these Chinese characters and writing essays. And so when I got to university, I knew I wanted to study theatre and I wanted to study English literature. But I had some spare subjects left, and I thought, why not continue with Chinese? It really was as simple as that. And I did it, and I continued, and I studied for 2 years, and then there was an opportunity to go overseas for a bit. So I completed 2 of my units at the Shanghai International Studies University. And in this time, I met some of the most amazing friends in the world. It was a 6-month program, and I remember so well, we had one really strict teacher, and they only spoke Chinese with us, which was incredible. For the past 2 years at Monash, they'd use Chinese in class, but it was always supported with English. And then me and my classmates were completely thrown into the deep end, and we were looking around terrified, thinking, "How are we going to do this? Can we go back to Melbourne?" But something amazing happens if you are immersed in a language, speaking it every day, because you have to listen, you have to understand, you have to respond, and out on the streets, something just happens in your brain. After about a week, you don't even realize you're picking things up. And that was the moment where I really felt, hey, I've got this. And at that time, once I'd finished those units, I'd actually completed my major in Chinese at university. That was it. But when I got back, I thought, I really want to continue with Chinese. Now, the next level up was Chinese Advanced 3, which means you were reading traditional Chinese literature. Stories by classic Chinese artists and poets. And I looked at the textbook and was like, oh my goodness, how on earth am I going to do this? But my good friend Kral, hi if you're listening, Kral, he took me to the class and said to the teacher, make sure this guy continues with Chinese, okay? He's really good at singing, really good at dancing, really loves performing, and, I want to see him be a star in Chinese. And all because my friend Kral said that to my teacher, she thought, I know just the thing for him. She was in charge of finding students for the Chinese bridge competition. And so that's where this whole new chapter of my life began.
Sounds like an amazing journey already. We only started the show here. Please share with our listeners why you learned Chinese at the beginning. Well, you mentioned that at your school you have French and Chinese. So what is the major reason that you learned Chinese and continued learning it?
Well, as I said, it really began with genuine self-interest. I was just fascinated with the character system. I was good at it as well. It's very structured in terms of whatever you put into Chinese, you will get out of it, okay? In French, we were learning how to conjugate different verbs and talking about tenses and trying to wrap our mouths around different sounds. Whereas Chinese, the grammar is actually, I know this sounds weird because you think, characters Chinese, it has this reputation being, a really difficult language to learn. The grammar is really, really simple. It's very similar to English in terms of the subject, verb, object formulations. So that's why being a Chinese teacher at the moment, I love teaching it because every day I get to say, how easy is this? And aside from the easy grammar, often people have trouble with the tones. And I will admit, all through school and going to university, tones were still something I'm trying to get my head around. The second tone, in particular, I have big quarrels with the second tone. I remember for the Chinese bridge competition, I was sitting in my teacher's office, and over again, 小苹果. Now, 小苹果means little apple, okay? 小 is third tone, okay? So it dips down and up. 小, and then ping in apple is 苹果. That's the second tone that goes up, rising, and then it's the third tone again. It goes down and then up. Now, to get that ping right, it's like you're asking a question, yeah? 苹, 小苹果. And I just remember sitting in that office saying ping, ping, ping over and over again until I almost went insane and I never wanted to say the word pingguo again. But, if that's what it takes, there's a really fun music to the language. And I'm quite a musical person. I love singing. And when you speak a Chinese sentence, so if I said like some Shakespeare now, 要是我这俗手上的宠物 亵渎了你的神圣的庙宇. You can kind of hear how it ebbs and flows and goes up and down. There's this beautiful poetry to the language. But it's quite interesting, I'll just point out, that when you're singing a Chinese song, you can't really use the tones because the notes and the melody of the song will take you in a particular direction. And I always argued with my Chinese friends. I'm like, well, you can't use Chinese tones when you're singing. And someone was trying to convince me that the way all Chinese songs are written is so that it matches up with the tones. And I think that's a load of rubbish. But if anyone wants to weigh in on that.
Yeah, I agree. Right. Obviously, Chinese has been difficult while you were learning, especially with the tones. So when you feel demotivated in learning Chinese, what's been the biggest motivation that kept you moving forward?
I think for Chinese, it really was just that fascination with the culture. And because the Chinese culture is so rich and interesting, and I think that should always be embedded in the teaching of Chinese. You can never really separate culture and language, because often how the characters have evolved, how the characters have developed, how the language has changed over time is reflected in culture. So, for instance, if we look at the character for hao, which means good, you've got the left, the radical on the left means female, and then on the right you have a child, and you can see how women bearing children, this was an idea of goodness. So there's some links. That's just one example of the links between cultural values and the language itself, and particularly with such a rich history of different emperors and dynasties, not to mention all the wonderful opportunities for travel. I should mention then, because it's very relevant to this question. After I'd finished my first year of learning Chinese, I'd picked Chinese and I was going to stick with it. My parents really wanted to encourage me, and they took me on a family holiday. Yep. To China, and we spent 2 weeks there. We started off in Xianggang in Hong Kong, and then we went up to Shanghai, and then to Beijing, Xi'an, Nanjing, and Suzhou. And that was a very quick trip around China. But I remember on my first day, it was actually in Hong Kong it happened, where they speak Cantonese primarily. But we were in a restaurant and they didn't speak a word of English. And fortunately, the waiter knew a bit of Mandarin, so I was able to say, 我要吃米饭, which means I want rice. And I was able to get that. And my parents, after me only having learnt 1 year of Chinese, they were like, wow, he can get us rice in China. I was able to teach them useful phrases when we're at the Great Wall of China, and everyone's trying to sell us things, coming up, oh, buy this, buy this, buy this. And I taught my mum the phrase, 不要. No yes. Want. I don't want it. 不要, 不要. And to this day, she still remembers that phrase. She doesn't know any Chinese except for 不要 and 谢谢, which is thank you. But they were really encouraging and supportive. But I was just hooked on the culture. There's not a day when I don't look back on those experiences. The first time I climbed the Great Wall, I've been back 5 times since. But that first time, just how breathtaking it was. Or in Xi'an, the home of the terracotta warriors. Or the beauty of Suzhou and the wonderful gardens there. It really was a remarkable and inspiring experience.
Definitely a lot of reasons to keep you moving forward, I guess. The Chinese culture is so diverse and there's so many things to love about. Well, now, please share with our audience your method of learning Chinese. What's been the most effective technique or method that's been working for you?
Okay, so maybe I can answer this question in terms of the different components of Chinese language learning, because obviously you've got the listening and then the speaking, reading, writing. All of them require slightly different approaches. So if I spoke first to listening, obviously at school, listening to your teachers as much as possible. The more the target language is used, the target language being Chinese in this case, is used in the classroom, the better. So being a Chinese teacher now, if I'm just coming into the classroom on my placements and the students aren't used to me speaking Chinese, I walked into a year 8 class and I said, 同学们好, which means hello classmates, hello students. And they looked at me blankly. They didn't know what to say. Whereas, when I was at school, it was always drilled in. The start of the class, 同学们好, 老师好, hello students, hello teacher. This is the routine. And I worked with these year eights over 3 weeks, and I got them into this routine, and simple things like saying, I want to go to the toilet, 老师我想上厕所. They have to use this language in the class. And there's new methods that are emerging in language teaching at the moment, which I certainly encourage more teachers to try. One of them is called Kral, which is where the language, you teach other subjects in Chinese. So my old high school, they're teaching sport and they're teaching music in Chinese, which is fantastic. Wow. So the kids from such a young age are getting this immersive education. There's another approach called AIM, the Accelerated Integrated Methodology, where you only speak Chinese, but every word has a gesture. So that way you can understand. There's lots of pointing and gesturing so you understand. So listening really begins with that. Now, outside of your teacher, you can listen to the CDs that they have in textbooks. They're really good because they speak nice and slowly. You can read along. So you start by reading your textbook and listening to the CD, and then put your textbook away, and see if you can listen and understand. Pause the CD and repeat afterwards what was said. Now, at a more intermediate level, when I was at university, one of my last electives I did was about Chinese media, and this was at Monash. And we watched news broadcasts in Chinese. Now, initially when they go, 大家好, 我要, it just go on and on so fast, and you're like, oh, so terrified. And that's how I often felt with Chinese TV shows and films. Sometimes they would speak so fast. But what we did with, I think it's the VLC media player, you can go to playback options and you can slow it down to 50%, 25% of the speed. So it sounds a bit distorted, but it really helps your listening practice. 大家好, 我是, those sort of things. And then you can hear, oh, that's what they're saying. Okay, write it down, make sense of it, and then get it faster until you're listening to it at full speed and you're able to hear all the words, all the different components. So that's for listening. For speaking, I'll go a bit faster or I'll take forever. For speaking, I found at school one thing that was really helpful, because in the initial stages, you are reading off cue cards, you're writing presentations, and you're presenting. I'm thinking about my students, so I'm teaching in Year 7 at the moment. They have to design a menu and then present about the menu. What do they want to eat? So they're looking off cue cards and notes to make sure they get their sentence structures correct. But when you get to the upper end of high school and you're having oral examinations, particularly when they're asking you basic questions, there's always that temptation to memorize responses. And lots of people do that, and you can do that because, in a way, for VCE, you can predict what they're going to ask. They'll probably ask, oh, what school subjects do you do? Tell me a bit about your family life. Now, we're not saying don't prepare responses because it is smart, but here's my secret to speaking success. Learn Chinese filler words. What are these? These are simple things like 那个这个可以说. These are little things. They don't have much meaning. 那个 is like this. 这个 that 可以说, it can be said. These things, by inserting these into your sentences, it makes it sound like you're thinking, even if you already know what you're going to say. Okay, so that was my little trick to getting that
smart
mark that I mentioned. Yep, in my Year 12 oral. Some bits you have to make up on the spot, obviously, because you can't predict every question. But for ones that I already knew, it was all 关于我的家。我的那个怎么说 is how do I say? So it shows that thinking process. 怎么说我的爸爸他是工程师，对啊 is just correct. So these different phrases that you can put in there really, really help. And particularly down the track when I got to Nanjing and was studying there, just being open to every opportunity to speak the language. Yeah, so just say yes to everything was my philosophy. I ended up doing that bit of Shakespeare I quoted you earlier was from Romeo and Juliet. I ended up doing a production of Romeo and Juliet where I played Romeo in Chinese. Now, a few years ago, I would say that would not be possible. Shakespeare's hard enough in English, let alone in Chinese. But through repeated practice and being around people who speak the language, listening to what sounds do you hear, how are they speaking, and then replicating that, that's how you can get to sound like a native speaker. Yeah. So on to reading. I always find, particularly at school, you get lots of textbooks and things like that. But as you move up, finding things that you're interested in reading, yeah? So if you've got some books that you like in English, so for instance, it might be Harry Potter, if you're at a lower level, you could get some stories that like Cinderella or things like that, kids books. Yeah, there's no shame in reading kids' books. They're lots of fun because you know the stories, and there's that sense of success when you're going through the book and you say, oh, I know that, or there's pictures and you can make connections. Sure, oh, there's a picture of a mouse, that must be mouse. So you sort of work it out like that, and then moving up in terms of me and reading what I'm interested in, as you might have guessed, I love 莎士比亚. Any guesses what that is? Shakespeare? 莎士比亚. William Shakespeare. So when I was in Nanjing, I bought the complete works of William Shakespeare in Chinese. Now, again, that might sound ridiculous, but it's actually really easy because what they've done is they've done literal translations of you've got all this archaic Shakespearean language, stand, unfold thyself, who art thou? But when you directly translate that into Chinese, it could be something like 那边是谁? Like, who is that over there? So these quite direct translations I found really, really easy, and it was just such a feeling of success when you're sitting there. Oh, I'm just reading Macbeth, Micah Bai, in Chinese, and it's like fantastic. So that's for reading, and the last one would be for writing. Now, at the early stages, you're probably looking at characters and thinking, how on earth can I make sense of these? When I'm teaching characters, I always try to find different pictures in them, and that's just a starting point, yeah? So I'll put together PowerPoint presentations and I'll say, the top of this kind of looks like, if we look at the character for food, or for left and right, for instance, maybe Victor can put in a little graphic in the description with the characters. So the word for left, 左, it has in the bottom right of it, it has it kind of looks like a T, a capital letter T with a line at the bottom. This means left. Okay, how do we remember that? Well, I tell my students, if you're driving a car, what do you have in your left hand? You've got the gear stick. Yeah. You can move that forward, left, right,
for
down.
Australia.
Left, right. Yeah, exactly. For Australia. This is for Australia. Well, yeah, I suppose. Okay, welcome to Australia, international listeners. We have the gear stick on the left. Maybe you can think of it as reverse if you need to. So that's how you'd remember that one. And then yo means right. And at the bottom right of that character, it has a square. Okay, which kind of looks like it's actually the radical for mouth, Kral, but you can think of it as a steering wheel. So when my students are getting mixed up, what do you have in your left? What do you have in your right hand? And that way they're able to recognize the characters. And over
that is
time,
so smart.
Yeah. Well, over time, as I've been using this approach in class, what happens now is I'll put a character up. I'll have a few ideas for how you could how to remember the pronunciation or how to remember how to write it. Some of them are ridiculous. I was teaching 桌子, which is table, the other day, and I had this awful graphic. I was saying you can draw the jaw in the drawer of the 桌子. To help them remember the pronunciation. I think I confused them more than helped them. But I had students sticking up their hand, that bit looks like this radical, or that bit kind of looks like this. So you can, and I'm like, wow, they're brilliant ideas. So if you get into this habit of finding pictures, of making sense of characters for yourself, it becomes a habit, and everyone you learn, rather than just rote learning, which means you're copying it down over and over again, you need comprehensible input, okay? Make sense of it in your head. Why is it that way? Engage with the history, engage with the meaning of the characters. That's the best way to do it. And then at the more intermediate level, when you have to write essays and things like that in Chinese, write about things that you like, yeah? I twist every topic into something that I want to talk about. Now, for my Year 12 Chinese exam, for instance, I prepared, I wanted to, I was really nervous. So I prepared and practiced responding to lots of different topics. And when I went into the exam, none of those topics were there. I was freaking out. I was panicking. What do I do? And I looked at them. One of them was about writing a film review. Okay. Now, I obviously hadn't practiced writing a film review. I didn't have any films up my sleeve, but I thought I had practiced writing about the environment. I knew all the vocabulary for the environment. I knew all my grammar structures. I felt confident that I could put that together. And so I tailored this knowledge about the environment to say that, I saw a film and it was about protecting the environment. This is what it said, this is what it did, and I got, I think it was 28 out of 30 for that essay. Yeah, wow. So for twisting it around, write about things that you're interested in. When I was in Nanjing, I wrote about, gender expectations or, about Shakespeare or musicals or whatever you want. Bring your interests in, find the passion, and writing can be a cinch. That was a very long response. I do apologize. Thanks for hanging with me.
That was a fantastic list of advice in learning Chinese. That's very systematic. Speaking, listening, reading, and writing. You pretty much covered everything, and I really liked your methods, especially on the ones that you're able to think of ways to connect a character with some story, with a picture, or with anything you relate it with something in real life that make it so much easier to memorize rather than just doing the repetition. So that is one thing I really like. For listening, you mentioned that you replace the words from English into Chinese, that, once you say that many, many times, and that become a second nature to your students. So what had been your biggest challenge in learning Chinese, and how did you overcome that?
Okay, so at school, when you're learning Chinese, at university as well, there's an awful lot of reading and writing. You get to do some oral presentations, but in terms of building your oral fluency, that means having daily conversations in Chinese. There is not much scope within the curriculum at schools and universities that facilitate this, okay? Now, when I went to Shanghai to do the study abroad program, they were able to set us up with language partners who we could discuss things with, ask questions to, practice our Chinese on a regular basis. And this is something that's so important that we often miss out on in our Chinese language learning. So it can be as simple as getting online, posting something on the notice board at university, looking for a language partner. You can help. There's so many, as we know, there's so many people with Chinese background in Australia, many of whom would love to practice their English. This language practice is so important. And I was really surprised when I first went in the Chinese bridge competition, I was reluctant to speak Chinese because I hadn't had much practice. I was pretty nervous, and there were some people from all around the world who didn't speak English, and Chinese was our only way to communicate. So because we were forced to use Chinese, it has to get better, and it does get better. Okay, but it does take time. When I had that full year in Nanjing, I reckon it took me the good part of the first semester to build up the confidence to go up to speak to anyone in any circumstance in Chinese. Okay, it came from everyday, gradual, small steps, building confidence, taking risks, until in that first semester, I was asked to present at a symposium speaking about Shakespeare and a traditional Chinese playwright called Tang Xianzu, comparing his book Mudanting, The Peony Pavilion, with Shakespeare. Now, there was quite a big audience, and there were lots of experts and professors in the audience. And here I was with, I thought at the time, my limited Chinese, how am I going to express this? But I went in confidently. I had fun. Fun is an attitude is such a huge part in language learning. And I did it. And then I got invited out to lunch with this group of professionals afterwards. And they wanted me to give feedback on a show that they were putting together where they're going to combine Tang Xianzu and Shakespeare's works together. And this was going to be performed in London that year. I mean, how exciting is that? It just shows you that having that language ability, where that can take you. But just the confidence. There was not much difference in my actual language ability from the start of that semester till a few weeks in where I was taking that risk. It's just about shifting your mindset, okay? Small successes, not fearing saying things wrong, okay? There's so much of this societal pressure in China we call it the concept of 面子, which is face. And we often worry about conserving and protecting our face because, we don't want other people to look down on us or think, oh, that person got something wrong. But actually what I'm saying to you, that the way you're going to make the most out of your experiences in China and improve the fastest is if you put yourself out there. Yeah, go have fun, talk to strangers. In cafes, at restaurants, wherever you are, use the language, love the language, have fun, and know that no one is judging you. Chinese people love it when you speak Chinese with them. Yeah, put such a smile on their faces, shows you really respect and value their culture. So that was certainly the biggest challenge for me, was having that confidence to speak. But you will get there, I promise.
Just get rid of your fear to make mistakes, because everyone makes mistakes, and the more mistakes you make, the better you'll be at it. It's a great way to overcome any type of challenges. So, while you were learning Chinese, did you have to deal with any accent or dialects?
Oh, goodness. Absolutely. When I was in the Shanghai International Studies University, our teacher there, the one who I mentioned, was very strict. She spoke in a very funny, very quick accent. And I was the head of the class. It was called the banjiang, and she would always say, "banjiang, yama." And it was just so fast. I had no idea what she was talking about. Because in Shanghai their accent is slightly different. But I think my biggest experience dealing with accents and dialects was actually in Nanjing. I'd often go to the local fruit market, and I'd try to buy things, and I'd often get very confused when I'm trying to pay for things, because they would say, I would ask, oh, how much, 多少钱, how much money? They would say, 十四. I'm like,
what?
Say 水字.
Oh,
can you say that again? They would say 十四. And I'm like, okay. And so I give them 4 yuan 40, okay? Because 四四, that's 4. So this is not $44. Yeah. It's not 44. No. It must be 440. And then he looks at my money, my little measly 440, and he says 十四. And he holds up his fingers, 十四, and he's holding up 14. I'm like, no, what? That should be 十四. 十四. And he's like, yes, that's what I'm saying, 十四. And I'm like, you're not saying that. So anyway, that was just a dialect difference, but that is why tones are so important, yeah? If I'd heard that he was going up 十四, I might have been able to work out, oh, maybe that 十 is a shi. Very confusing. Another fun little example is just when I go to, I went to the gym a bit when I was in Nanjing, and they have fun group fitness classes. So they had some yujia, which you might be able to guess is yoga class. And again, the instructor had a different dialect. And instead of saying 放松, which means relax, she would always say 放松. We never had any idea, and it was just lots of fun. She'd always come up to us, and we'd be doing this crazy stretch, and she'd push down on our backs and be like 放松, and we had to laugh. But it was lots of fun.
Yeah, those are some common issues with pronunciation of Chinese, native Chinese. People with different dialects sometimes they have difficulty saying that, making the difference between 14 and 40. So there's a tongue twister, the very popular tongue twister.
Oh yes, 40,
which is
what is it? Yeah, 44, 10, 14, 14, 40, 40. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, awesome. So if you are to start learning Chinese from scratch all over again, how would you do it?
Oh, goodness. Well, actually, working as a Chinese teacher now, I'm finding out about all sorts of different methods for language learning, which I mentioned before. And I'm going to a conference this Monday and Tuesday, and it is about this approach where you just speak in Chinese and use gestures. And I think I would love to be in that sort of classroom and see how much progress I could make by just using Chinese every day, because you use the gestures, you use the language, and then you use it to create songs and raps and things like that. And because I'm a very musical, creative person, I think that could really help me improve my Chinese abilities very quickly. I know in my Chinese classes with the Year 7s and Year 8s, as they've been doing this food topic, I wrote a song. And I went into class and played it with guitar, and it was very simple. It's based on a song on YouTube, but I changed it to match their textbook. So they have to repeat after me. So it's like, 我爱中国菜, and then all the students were like, 我爱中国菜, 古老肉柠檬鸡片. And then they're like, 古老肉柠檬鸡片, 春卷炒饭炸虾片, 你要三明治还是汉堡包? 我饿了，我什么都要，来一盘狮子头，一盘炒青菜，早饭、午饭和晚饭，我爱中国菜。如果你问我爱吃什么菜，我只会告诉你，我爱中国菜。And now some of my most disengaged students who would sit up the back and be like, I don't care about Chinese, I don't want to be here. They were the loudest singers. They were so into it. And then I created a test that was based exclusively on the lyrics to that song, and they aced it. 100% manfen. That means 100%. Nice. That was the first time they'd ever got over 50% in Chinese, and I was so proud. But it's just showing that people learn in different ways. And so I think if I was starting from scratch, find a method that works for you, okay? If you're a self-study person, do that. If you want to use an application on your phone that's like a game, if that's what hooks you, I'll talk later a bit about them, then go with that. If it's a musical creative approach, go with that, yeah? Whatever suits your learning style.
That's awesome advice. That's a very funny song, I have to say.
Oh,
It's a very funny song. By the way, I watched your 小苹果 music video. It was just so fun.
Is that the one on the Jiangsu Foreign Talent Competition?
Yes. I'll actually link that in our show notes so the audience can watch you sing that song. It's funny.
Wonderful. Okay. It was a lot of fun. There's about 14 camera angles, so it looks spectacular, but I'm so embarrassed by the dance break. If you go and watch it now, it's on my website under the videos. I just start making it up because I thought I'd have a bit of fun. But it's so ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, that actually linked.
It was good.
Yeah. Oh dear.
It was good. At least the Chinese loves it. So you mentioned about the methods to use signs when you say Chinese words. What do you really mean by that? Is that kind of like sign language, or like when do you use signs? How do you apply that?
Look, I'll be honest, I'm not super confident with the method yet. That's why I'm going to the conference Monday and Tuesday, and I'm actually doing a presentation there about my musical approach. But my understanding of it is, and I've been trying a bit of this in class, it helps with tones as well, okay? So, for instance, it's hard to demonstrate with that video, but if we take the word war, which means I, this is a very low sound, okay? Often with that third tone, you're thinking go down and then go up again. People have trouble with that. Then they go, war, or something like that. Actually, it's very low. It's sort of guttural in your throat. So the gesture for war, you'd be pointing at yourself, but you're sort of pointing at your stomach, okay? So it's nice and low. Okay, so you got war,
right?
And then if you're saying where you are, you would say 在. Now this has a dropping sound. It's the fourth tone. So what I do, 在 means in, at, on. So what you do is you take one hand and you maybe point with 3 fingers, and then you hold your other hand out like you're holding a plate. Okay, and then you raise your other hand and you push those fingers down onto the plate, okay? And while you do that, you say 在, which gives you that idea of where you are. You're at that place, 在. And that way, when students are saying this word, they know exactly that there's that motion to it. There's that's how the tone works.
Right.
So 我 down low, 在 falling. And then things like ma, the question word, you would just like stretch your arms above. It's just a small little opening your fist. You make a fist and then just open it, ma, because it's neutral tone. It's very light. It's like you just put it there, ma. So things like that. Yeah, I won't go into too much detail now, but if you are curious, look up the accelerated integrated methodology. It's something that's coming up now in schools. I think as more research goes into the most effective ways to learning a language, you'll find that actually this approach where you sit behind a desk in the classroom and copy out notes, it might be good for, revising for exams or things like that, but actually to build your communicative competence, which is, after all, what language is about, being able to communicate and using it in every facet of life and in different jobs and occupations, this approach where you are spending about 85% of the class speaking Chinese, being involved, being active with it, as opposed to being passive, sitting at your desk. This is a new approach. I'm really excited about it.
Sounds very interesting. That's definitely a good way to learn Chinese. People should really give that a try. I would just say having a hand gesture for each single word in Chinese, there's a lot of imagination involved, but, it's definitely an effective way to learn.
It's not something that stays with you. You begin with that, but then after a while you don't need it anymore. You can just talk and it's all embodied. It's ingrained in your language, because otherwise you look a bit silly pointing and gesturing the whole time. No, it's kind of like the pinyin system. So where we write the English letters above, you start out with that, okay? It's like your training wheels when you begin. But by the time you get to, your second, third year of learning Chinese, for most of the words that the pinyin goes. Yeah, you'd only have pinyin for new words. Yeah, same sort of idea.
Nice. So now let's move on to the funny part. Okay, so please share with our audience an embarrassing or a funny moment while you were learning Chinese.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so look, I guess most of my funny moments come from being involved in the Chinese bridge competition, because it is it's something that anyone can get involved with. Yeah, they have it for school students. So if you're still at school, talk to your teachers about doing that. And this is all over the world. Yeah. And also they have it in universities. So I encourage all of you, wherever you're listening from, to stick out to listen up for that. It's such an amazing experience. They take you over there. There's cameras on you all the time. They make you do all sorts of crazy things like run down the Great Wall of China saying, 中国我来了. Oh, that was the wrong tones. 中国我来了. That sort of stuff. China, I'm here. 中国我爱你. China, I love you. And then it's 40-degree heat. And then they make you go back and do it all over again. Now, my funny moment was we had to draw out numbers, okay, to see who would be first for our respective continents. Now, there's all the different countries of the world are in the competition, yeah, and they're divided into continent groups. So I was in Oceania, okay, so that's like Australasia, Australia, New Zealand, the islands, the Philippines, that area, okay, 大洋洲, as we say in Chinese. Now, I pulled out number 1. So I was the first person, and I think normally Australasia goes on the first day. However, this year they decided, this was 2015 when I participated, this year they decided Australasia's right at the end, okay? We're the last of 5 continents. And just before us, on the day we were doing, I think we were doing a Wednesday, we just had the whole continent of Asia, okay? All these different countries in Asia performing. Now, it's the same studio audience. They're sitting there and they're tired. It's been long. Asia's done. Fantastic. Can we go home? Oh, no, wait, there's that other continent, Australasia, down in the southern hemisphere. That's right, we haven't forgotten. Only 11 of us, and I was the first person. And I thought, I've got to wake up this audience, okay? They're going to sleep. They're tired. They don't want to be here. I'm going to show them that we're the best continent. And I'm going to do this, okay? This is the moment I've been waiting for all these days. All right, so they say, 开始. Okay, and so I'm in the wings, I'm on the side of the stage, and I run out, and I do a really big jump, so I get their attention. I land, okay, and they tell me to start my speech. 大家好，我叫王大伟. Starting my speech, and then they say, oh, ting, 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 which means stop. And I'm like, what? And they say, oh, one of our cameras wasn't filming. So I'm so nervous. My heart's beating. I put so much effort into that. So I go all the way back to the wings, and then they say, do it again. And the audience, of course, they've already seen it. So what do I have to do? I have to jump bigger. That's what I think. That's what goes to my head. No, come on. I've got to do a bigger jump, okay? I've got to engage them. This is my second shot. It wasn't big enough the first time. So I run out, I do a big jump, and then they say, 开始, and then little did I know, I am breathless. I'm so tired. My heart's beating. I've just been running, jumping. And so if you go onto my website and you scroll down, it's the last video on the media screen, on the media page, because I'm pretty embarrassed by it, because I'm so exhausted. You can be, 大家好，我叫王大伟，来自澳大利亚的墨尔本. By the end of it, you can hear I'm so exhausted. I forget all my tones. Right. But anyway, it was lots of fun. But yeah, that's certainly a funny moment of when I've been building up to this moment, and I was just absolutely breathless.
That's pretty funny. I guess you have achieved your goals to wake up the audience.
Yes,
in that sense. Well, now let's move on to a high note. Tell us a success story, a most rewarding moment after you have become fluent in Chinese.
Certainly, I would say for most language learners, you know you're fluent at Chinese when you have a dream in Chinese. That happened to me in my first semester in Nanjing, and I was so proud. I ran around and tell everyone, I had a dream in Chinese. Hello. But actually, I think the most rewarding moment when I really felt like, wow, I'm fluent, I can use this language, was when in my second semester in Nanjing, I became president of the Australia-China Youth Association, ACYA. I mentioned them before as one of the societies that I joined when I was at Monash. They have it at all different universities throughout Australia. So if you're in Australia, do get involved. But yeah, the old president stepped down, so I was on. And what we do is we connect not just the Australian and China culture, but all cultures from around the world, and we engage them in different activities and things. So it was my job to run some different activities. So I had like a speed dating sort of first night where everyone gets together and they keep swapping around, and I made all sorts of crazy fun rounds where you can only speak in Chinese, or you can only use gestures, or things like that, no talking, that sort of stuff, which was lots of fun. But I was trying to organize. There was this big, across Asia and China chapters, this big event called the Alumni Speaker Series, and I had to try to arrange a venue. And I was calling up all these contacts, no one was getting through. So I just took off and was going to different venues and trying to speak to bosses of the venues in Chinese, asking if we could use them for this event. And I was just, I was exhausted. But then I stepped back and thought, David, you're using Chinese to talk to people with very thick accents that are hard to understand, and you're actually making deals with them and making progress. You're doing business in Chinese. And it's working. And that was just a real moment. And we had the event in there and it was very successful. That was just a real moment of accomplishment of what you can actually do by yourself.
Definitely a great accomplishment where you find yourself being able to deal with any sort of situation in Chinese. So how would you compare your life before you've learned Chinese and your life after you've learned Chinese?
Well, yeah, so before I started learning Chinese, I really loved theatre. obviously. And then when I started learning Chinese, I still love theatre. But when I got to university and I chose my majors, I told everyone, oh, I'm doing my majors are Chinese and theatre. So everyone assumed, oh, Chinese theatre, you must love Chinese theatre. And I'm like, oh, well, actually, because I love Jingju, which is the traditional Chinese opera, but I would never picture myself performing it. It's very, very high pitched. It's very, very difficult. You'd have to train for years and years to be able to do that. So it's a bit conflicted. Everyone was saying, "Oh, what are you going to do? Chinese theatre. How do you combine these if you don't like actual, Chinese traditional theatre?" And it was a bit of a conundrum in my life, a bit of a 矛盾, which means a contradiction in Chinese. And so, but then I'm somehow through all that, I came up with this idea of teaching. Yeah, because I didn't want to just be a performer, because I really wanted to have a positive impact on other people. I love, doing good for other people. People who, an audience who come to the theatre, they can really enjoy the show. They might ask for your autograph at the end, that sort of thing. But in terms of the lasting impact, I really value the role of a teacher. And so what I do, because I remember from school, some teachers are so boring, and they would just stand up there with a textbook and they would recite things and then make you do exercises from the workbook. I thought, oh my goodness, learning can be so interesting. Learning Chinese in particular can be so interesting. But alas, at schools, there's lots of mixed teachers. So I thought, why don't I combine these interests? Yeah, that's where this journey of before and after learning Chinese has taken me. So what I do now is I go around to primary and secondary schools, as we said in the introduction, and I perform Chinese songs or like Disney songs actually in Chinese, and they're very interactive and engaging. But I use my performance skills to engage and interest students in learning Chinese. And I advocate them. I tell them my story and tell them, where it could take them. And they love singing along and getting involved. I do like Let It Go from Frozen, Sweet Papa, Sweet Papa. And then they learn Snowman,
Nice.
雪人, 你想不想堆个雪人? Do you want to build a snowman? And then their favorite one I've added on is Moana. So the song 不客气, which, if you know Chinese, means you're welcome. So they have to keep repeating that in the chorus. 还是这句告诉你, let's hear it. 不客气，我把这世界变美丽，这很简单，很容易，不客气. Yes, it gets them all up and singing. And I've just added in a song from Mulan as well. 男子汉, I'll make a man out of you. So lots of fun there. But yeah, that's really the story. My life before was theatre, and now I have theatre in Chinese, and I'm using it in a new way. Because I think engagement is such a key part of learning Chinese. And most students, the school I went to for this placement, really, really low interest, and they don't see the relevance or importance of the Chinese language. So it really takes, I want to change that around. I want to combat this stereotype of Chinese being a difficult language and one that foreigners should stay away from.
I love that. That is fantastic. See, not only your life has changed, you are also changing other people's life by, having so much passion into Chinese and, in teaching and getting the music into the Chinese language learning process. This is fantastic. Now, please share with us one special thing about the Chinese culture that is different to your own culture.
Oh, okay. So, oh no, I know exactly which one I want to pick. When I was studying in Shanghai, we had the Christmas break off. So I went up to Beijing with a small group of friends. And one morning, we were going through the park, a park with I think it's called the Tiantan, like the Temple of Heaven. And in the park, there are all these people, all these Chinese people from different families, and they're gathered together and they're engaged in all sorts of arts and crafts and cultural activities. You've got sword fighting, square dancing, juggling, singing groups, tai chi, games, flying kites, whatever it is. And I thought, they're all from different families. They're just getting together and they're bonding over shared interests. And there was such a beautiful sense of community and cohesion that it's early in the morning and they're out in the fresh air doing exercise, loving life, getting involved, sharing joy between families. Whereas I reflect on my life in Australia and what we see in parks. And perhaps in other places around the world. I know I can speak of my experiences traveling throughout Europe that it's very much, in parks you see individual families. Sometimes you'd have a specific gathering between a couple of families, but never this sense of community where you're getting together and doing different artistic things. And I just thought that's brilliant. Yeah, and that's what I love about China so much. And living over there in Nanjing, I really got involved in different groups because this sense of community is wonderful, whether it's going out to do Tai Chi. I started up an a cappella club. There's all sorts of different things to get involved in.
Yeah, great insight on that. What's your favorite city in China?
Oh, favorite city in China would have to be, it's a tough pick, but I'm going to have to say Hangzhou. Which is near Suzhou, near Nanjing and Shanghai. It has the beautiful Xihu, which is the West Lake. Some of you might know the legend of the White Snake took place there. But on this trip, when I was when I was in Shanghai and I took the trip up to Beijing, on another weekend, me and my friends got the train over from Shanghai to Hangzhou. It's very close, about an hour and a half or so. And it was so peaceful. I love beautiful big lakes. We rented some bicycles. We went cycling around. We took a boat out onto the lake, and it was so peaceful. We climbed up the pagoda, Leifang Ta, I think it's called, and you can just look out at this beautiful view. I was listening to my iPod and singing, "It's the circle of life. From the day we arrive on this planet and blinking step into the sun, there is more to see than can ever be seen, more to do than can ever be done." I just had such a wonderful feeling looking out here, how beautiful life is, how beautiful Chinese culture is. And we sat by the lake as the sun was setting and we sung songs together in English and Chinese. And it was just such a beautiful, precious experience. And every time I go to China, I love going back to Hangzhou for that lake and the beautiful memories and the beautiful culture there. Yeah.
Beautiful. You have created a beautiful scenery for us. I can almost visualize what you were seeing, while you were talking about that. Is there a tool, an app, or a website that you cannot live without in learning Chinese?
Oh, so one that I really got into when I was in Nanjing. Now, and it really meets a need because throughout school, when you're learning Chinese, you'll no doubt have tests on different topics. So before the test, what do? Obviously, you practice the characters, you learn them all, you're perfect. You write down the characters. Okay, great, you've done the test. You might have a summative exam at the end of the semester or at the end of the year. Okay, you remember, you practice those characters. Then what do? New semester, new sets of characters. You keep learning. But hang on, what happens to those characters that you learnt last semester? Yeah, unless you're coming into contact with them regularly or they keep cropping up in your readings, you're going to forget how to write them. You might forget how to pronounce them, how to read them. Yeah, you learn for your tests the characters, the tones, the pronunciation so perfectly, but memory will not last, okay? As you keep putting things in, you might lose some things. Introducing the app, Skritter, okay? That's Skritter. Have you heard of it before?
Skritter, I think I've heard of it.
Yeah?
Yes.
So what it is...
Yes, but I've never used it.
So it's for learning characters. Now, you download it on your phone. You do have to pay. I'm sorry, but it's super worth it. It's not that expensive. What it has is a memory formula, okay, for learning characters. Now, if you're studying a particular textbook, you go in to the Skritter library and they have a whole list of different textbooks, okay? Find your textbook and then it will create lessons for you, okay? Now, not just textbooks, but also you might have heard of the HSK. That's the Hanyu Shuiping Kaoshi. This is the Chinese proficiency test, okay? All the word lists for level 1 all the way through to HSK level 6. They are in there. You select it And then what it will do is it will add a few words at a time, okay? They'll pop up. You might have to read it, okay? What is the pronunciation, okay? You type it in, select correct answers. It might have the pinyin. You have to write the characters. You write the characters with your fingers, okay? If you click a little button, it gives you hints. How can you remember the characters, okay? What does this look like? It's edited by other Chinese language learners, okay? So people who see things in characters, who have different ways of remembering the pronunciation, will put their thoughts in there and you can see them, okay? You see the top one, the best one. If you click another button, there are example sentences, okay? So you can see how it's used in practice. You don't necessarily get all this in a dictionary, but the best bit. So you practice, you click next. Okay, sometimes it will say right, it will say wrong. Sometimes if you get it right, but you're not very confident, you can select, rate your own abilities. Now, based on what you get wrong and what you mark as, so-so, haven't quite got it yet, as you keep learning words, the application will bring back the old words, okay? It will test you again. It will test you over and over until you're saying, yep, I got this right, I know this, okay? So you know them, good, short-term memory, fantastic, you put the app away. The next day you come back, yes, you're learning new words, but bam, there's this word that you wrote a week ago. Do you still remember it, okay? If you don't, it's going to keep coming up, okay? It tests you. This is how we build memory. And it's got that comprehensible input I mentioned before, okay? The tricks, the tips, okay? We're not just practicing over and over again. How do I remember this? What are the cues? Oh, the English. I remember that character looks like this. If you don't understand something, you click another button. It's got the full dictionary. In there. So it explains the different radicals, the different meanings. It's everything in one. It's guaranteed to work for your brain. It works like a game, okay? It's addictive. It rewards you. It says, congratulations, you've done 5 minutes. If you get really into it, there's Skritter newsletters that come out which say who are the top Skritter users in the world for this month, okay? So if that's something that works for you, yeah, give it a shot. If you're on your phone all the time, if you're waiting on the train, waiting for a bus, whatever it is, whip out your phone rather than scrolling through your Facebook news feed. Learn some characters, Let pop up the ones that you did 2 weeks ago, okay? See if you remember them. Keep building this knowledge, okay? It's that repetition. That's how we learn a language. That's how we get, down the track and we've still got the words we learned back in year 7, back in our first year, okay? So that's my app. Hope you enjoy it.
Cool. Very complete introduction to this app. Sounds like a great app to have. So definitely check it out. I'll link that to the show note as well. So if you are to recommend to our listeners only one book in learning Chinese or the Chinese culture, what would that be?
Oh, Victor, I think that's the hardest question that you've asked me out of all of this. I have at home about 2 shelves just crammed full of Chinese books, Chinese learning materials.
Wow.
I was a bit obsessed at school. I was very excited by this language and that there's so many ways to learn. I wanted the best ways, so I kept buying things, and now I've got a wonderful resource as a teacher. So I'm going through my shelf trying to think of what's best, and I've narrowed it down, but I think one that's a really good resource it's by Tuttle, Tuttle is the publisher. We'll write this down later, and it's called Learning Chinese Characters, okay? It's a revolutionary new way to learn and remember the 800 most basic Chinese characters. And there are different volumes of this. Okay, but what makes this different? What I love about this book is that it's all what I was talking about before, okay? It's meaningful input, okay? For each character, there are descriptions, there are pictures, okay? What images can you see in it? There's little ways to remember the pronunciation. It shows you stroke order. It fully explains how to write it, what pictures you can see, how it connects, the meaning of different radicals. It puts them together. It gives you tests. All of this sort of stuff is in there. It shows you related characters so you can learn them in a logical sequence. I think it's quite an invaluable resource. There's all sorts of different character writing books, But what you're looking for is not one that just makes you copy it out over and over again. It's one that's going to make sense for you. Okay, so for me, I would recommend learning Chinese characters, the TOEFL book, but there's so much else out there.
Learning Chinese characters. All right, so now this is your chance to teach our listeners your favorite Chinese quote, phrase, or expression.
Oh, all right. Well, okay, it's an oldie but a goodie. My favorite thing to say in Chinese is, funnily enough, a word that I have not found, that there's not really a good English expression for, okay? It's when something's, some translations could be, oh, it's troublesome, it's bothersome, it's really annoying, it's kind of tedious, lots of those things in life, and you just want to have a bit of a complain, okay? Now, in Chinese, there's a really good word for this, okay? It just conveys all your feelings, okay? And the word is 麻烦. 麻烦.
Yeah.
Okay, so that ma, you can hear, is the second tone. It's the rising tone. Ma, so it's kind of like you're asking a question. Ma, mum, what are you doing dancing on the table? Ma. And then fan is 轻声, okay? It's the light tone, okay? It's just fan. You just put it there. Remember I said before, you take your fist, hold your fist up about your face height, and then you just open your fist, okay? Just like you're flicking it out. Fan, ma, fan. Okay, that's how we pronounce it. And this means troublesome, bothersome, okay? So if you're really not, 麻烦, or you could say 太麻烦. That means it's too troublesome, it's too bothersome, okay? But it's a great word just to get at your frustration. 麻烦, 麻烦. Use it all the time. And you've obviously heard of the expression Chinglish. Yes, that's when we're speaking English and we just throw in some Chinese phrases. Often it works the other way. You're speaking Chinese, you don't know a word, so you bring in some English.
Yep.
Well, actually, when you're speaking English, often me and my friends all find we don't have a better word than just say, oh, it's really 麻烦. Yeah, so you just throw that Chinese word in everywhere. But yeah, Chinglish is a really good way to practice your Chinese, okay? So whenever something's really annoying, talk to people who speak Chinese, just say, oh, it's really 麻烦, isn't it? Did you see that test the other day? Oh, yeah, I know. Tell me about it. How 麻烦? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you have driven that word into our listeners' head now. 麻烦. If you are to give our listeners one single piece of advice in learning Chinese, what would that be?
Speak to everyone. I said it before, I'll say it again. Okay? When you go to China, the nice old lady in the shop, the kid on the train, the couple walking past on the mountain, find language partners. Now, this isn't just something that you can do in China, okay? Go to Chinatown, go to a Chinese restaurant, overhear people speaking Chinese and just talk to them. On the train, when I go to my loc class on Tuesday afternoons, there's always a language school that gets out, and lots of Chinese people get onto the train. And if I overhear their conversation and they're speaking Mandarin, I'll just say, oh, hello, 我可以跟你练习我的中文吗? That's just, can I practice my Chinese with you? And they're always happy. Yeah, they'll be like, oh, 可以. They want to add your WeChat, that sort of stuff. But I'm just showing you how simple it is. I've started doing some busking on the streets of Melbourne. So I sing Chinese songs. And lots of people come up and they want to talk to you and things like that. And you can practice Chinese. Just look for all sorts of opportunities, okay? Lots of people say, download lots of Chinese TV shows, watch movies, that sort of stuff. For me, what I think is going to be really beneficial for you to actually build your confidence is taking an active approach, yeah? It's getting out there, talking to people, go to different Chinese events, meet people, okay? Find Chinese friends, and obviously the best thing of all, go to China.
That is such an awesome advice, because when I think about it, me, myself, being a Chinese, if I say in English to people in Australia, like, can I practice my English with you? That may sound weird. But if you, being a non-native Chinese, trying to speak Chinese with Chinese people are always impressed. And people will love that. I cannot think of a situation where people will reject you. Like, people are so welcoming of that type of conversation. Absolutely. Because it's just interesting. It's just out of people's expectation, People don't expect a foreigner to speak Chinese with them and even practice Chinese with them. That is just very interesting. And they'll share that. When they meet someone like this, they'll actually go back home and share with their friends or relatives and say, hey, today there's a foreigner that tried to speak to me in Chinese and he was learning Chinese and blah, blah, blah. That'll become a very interesting experience to them as well. So
exactly.
Definitely recommend that.
I'll just say on that, Victor, it always amazes me how surprised people are. They'll turn to me and be like, do you know, you're the first foreigner that I've ever spoken to in Chinese. And I think, my goodness, because hello, everyone learning Chinese, listening to this podcast right now, you are one of a kind, okay? Well done for taking this challenge, all right? Not everyone does this. Most people think, 太麻烦, yeah, 麻烦, it's troublesome, it's difficult, it's hard, okay? You've taken that first step. You're here, you're listening, you want to know how to learn this language, okay? And the Chinese people, it shows so much respect and a love for their culture when you just try the simplest little thing, yeah? Just try it, 你好, 你好. That's all it takes. It'll put a smile on their face.
Great advice. So, David, you have shared so much with us. Just before we let you go, how can our listeners reach you?
Oh, okay. Well, I have actually got a new website that I launched this year. So we'll put it in the description, but it's just my name, wangdawei, .weebly.com. Weebly, WEEBLY.com. So on this website, you can find out all about me and what I do at the schools that I visit. There's an About Me section in English and Chinese for your convenience. Lots of nice photos. On the media page, there's all sorts of videos from my different television performances. And there's also, if you go to the 联系方式, that's all the different contact methods. So you can have my WeChat, you can send me an email, you can give me a call on the phone. It's all up there. And there's also a form if you are from a school or know a school that will be interested. You can just type your details in there. I'll get in touch, and I'm happy to offer affordable rates to come to schools. And yeah, my mission is just to get the word out there as much as possible so we can change around these statistics that's saying, people, very monolingual, okay, they think Chinese is really hard, they want to learn other languages, they want to give up when they get to year 11 and 12 at school. It's up to us, to turn this around.
Great. I'll link that in the show notes. So, David, thank you so much for sharing so much valuable information with us. Your journey has truly been amazing. We really appreciate that.
You're most welcome. Thanks very much for having me.
To our listeners, the show note is now available at ChineseTalkEase.com/16. TalkEase is spelled as TALKEZE. Do you want to learn Chinese for free? Start your own journey to Chinese fluency with my video lessons at ChineseTalkEase.com. TalkEase is spelled as TALKEZE. Also remember to join our Facebook group. Just head over to TalkChineseCommunity.com. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. Each month, I will choose one reviewer and give out a 1-year subscription to all my premium video lessons for free. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next episode.